Hi everyone, welcome to the first Mayor Time of 2023, where I am joined by a very close friend of mine and one of the most passionate independent watch brand collectors you'll ever see, Mike Shani. Shani, thank you for being here with me, brother.
Thank you, George. Thank you for having me back. I think it's been a little over 2 years since you and I got together here at Watchbox Studio. So I was very excited when I got the call from you. Really appreciate it. I've been looking forward to having this opportunity to meet with you.
Yeah, a lot has changed, and you've made a lot of moves over the last 2 years since we were here in this very room. And there's been a huge increase in popularity for independent watchmaking.
There has.
And so tell me why you think that is and what independent watchmaking means to you.
So to me, George, independent watchmaking is when science meets art, or more specifically, when horology meets craftsmanship. And to me, craftsmanship is the making of a watch using traditional artisanal methods. And today, I'm going to share with you watches and watchmakers who have really used those methods throughout their process in watchmaking. In terms of the growth in the interest in the past 2 years, I would say collectors have really become very passionate about the watchmaking process. Not just the watch, but the watchmaking process. So they want to be involved in the story of the watch. They want to get to know the watchmaker. They want to visit the workshop. They want to be involved in the details of the watch. And like I said, just be more involved in the story of the watch. And independent watchmaking caters to that, I would say, which is what I think collectors have kind of migrated towards in the past couple of years. Also, I believe the tremendous success of independent watchmaking brands such as FP Journe have given collectors a lot of confidence in independent watchmaking. I believe FP Journe has really legitimized independent watchmaking and helped kind of pave the road for them.
Without a doubt. So we have some very, very special pieces here with us today that you will probably not see anywhere else. And I've enjoyed watching you go through the process of assembling all these pieces. Some of these you purchased from me. And let's start with a watch where I'll never forget when I first learned about it, because you called me up on the phone one day, and I really don't think you've ever had a bad day. And if you have, you certainly don't show it. And you said to me, "Georgie, I have a new watch coming this week." And I thought to myself, that's interesting. You haven't mentioned anything to me about a watch coming. You certainly weren't getting anything from me. And so I said, what watch? And you said, "It's a Keaton Myrick." And I was like, "Keaton who?" And that's just one example of how you learn something new every day in this industry. I've dedicated 16 years of my life to the watch industry. I eat, sleep, and breathe it, and I learned something new about a particular watch, or in this particular instance, about a new independent watch manufacturer in this watch here, the Keaton Myrick. So tell me about this one.
Yeah, so Keaton Myrick, George, is an American watchmaker based in the Northwest Pacific state of Oregon. This is the 1 of 30 series, so it's a limited edition of 30 watches. This specific example was a collaboration between Keaton Myrick and Joshua Shapiro on the guilloche pyramids on the sub-second style. And then me as well. I also contributed to the design of the watch with the rose gold accents. So this is just another example of, a customer being able to contribute to some of the details of a watch when it comes to working with an independent watchmaker. But the specifics of the watch are, it's in hours, minutes, seconds, 50-hour power reserve, cases in stainless steel. It's 42 millimeters in diameter, about 13.5 millimeters thick. However, if you were to order one today, the case has evolved since it was launched in 2013, and I think now you could get it in 40 millimeters. In terms of the architecture and the finishing, Keaton does have his own proprietary clicking system movement. All of his finishing and decorations are done by hand. And then, I think one of the most charming aspects of the watch is the dial. The dial is German silver, and it's hand frosted, kind of giving it that, that unique, grainy, shiny look to it.
Yeah, that's very cool how you had some input into the features of the watch. You could personalize it, something that you just commented on, how more collectors are looking for that and a further connection with their watches. Roughly how long did it take for Keaton to make the watch?
Well, Keaton's, he's a one-man show. So this specific watch took over 3 years, but it was a lot of fun. I spent a lot of time with Keaton over the phone, talking about it. Time went by really fast. He and I kind of came up with the idea of the engraving on the buckle and also the crown. The engraving represents the mountains of Oregon that Keaton sees outside of his window from his workshop. So this was, was the first time that Keaton incorporated that design to his wristwatch, which was pretty cool.
Absolutely. So the next watch we have with us here was made by another very small independent watchmaker. However, he has risen in popularity over the last several years, and I'll never forget when I first had the privilege of meeting Rexhepi at the last ever Basel World in 2019. And he still really wasn't on the radar then, even for people who were in the watch industry, not many, and certainly wasn't in the main hall at Basel World. He was, with the smaller booths and the smaller brands in a different venue. And when I first met him, I remember looking at what I believe was this exact model, the AK-06, and I remember pulling the crown out and seeing the 0 seconds reset mechanism go to work. And super charming, charismatic guy. And something that stuck with me was he said that he knew exactly what he wanted to do for the next 8 years. He had an 8-year plan. And I was like, this guy, in addition to being super passionate, is very determined, and he has goals that he wants to achieve. And so tell us about this particular Akrivia AK-06 made by Rexhepi.
So, George, Akrivia is a Swiss-based brand that was launched in 2012 by Rexhepi, like you mentioned, who previously worked for Patek Philippe and FP Journe. And although he's a young phenom, he's very senior in experience. And actually, Akrivia is a Greek word for precision. And that's what you get with Akrivia watches. These are precision instruments. This example here, the AK-06, was the brand's first non-tourbillon wristwatch. Limited edition of 50 pieces, 25 in titanium, 25 in steel. This example is in titanium. It's like you said, it's an hours, minutes, seconds reset, which is a cool function to have. Mm-hmm. It's got a power reserve indicator as well as a 100-hour power reserve, which is also very functional to have. But it's 41 millimeters in diameter, about 9.9 millimeters thick, so it's pretty sleek case. In terms of the architecture and the finishing of the watch, it's an open work style. Both the front and the back are very symmetrical. It's got a perlage main plate with a hand-hammered upper dial. And then in terms of the finishing, you got Bombay Anglage, you got black polish, you got Cote de Genève. I could go on and on about the finishing. The finishing is impeccable on this watch, and no shortage of craftsmanship with the AK-06. In fact, I would say Rexhep is the epitome of using traditional artisan methods when making his watches.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I love everything about that one, even down to the strap, which I imagine you had some input in.
I had some input.
Well, the next piece, we have another one that we may even go to another level of finishing with this next one. We have a watch from Philippe Dufour, his signature and iconic legendary simplicity.
Philippe Dufour needs no introduction, and he is a living legend of independent watchmaking. As an independent watchmaker, he has made 3 watches, 2 with horological significance. So the first one is the Grand Sonnerie, with I believe 8 in existence, and he was the first one to actually put the chiming mechanism into a wristwatch. And then the second one is the Duality, which I believe there are 9 in existence, and Philippe Dufour was the first to put 2 escapements into a wristwatch. And then the third watch, which is an example that we have here, is the Simplicity. The Simplicity was launched in the year 2000, and I believe to date he's made about 220 or so. It's 37 millimeters in diameter. This is rose gold, about 8.8 millimeters thick, long lugs, so it fits very comfortably on the wrist. And then, like you said, George, you know, Philippe Dufour is known and admired for his finishing, which he does all by hand and with traditional methods.
So it's interesting. I still remember when you were telling me about this particular piece, and you said that you couldn't wait for me to wind it. And you said the clicking sound that you'll hear when you wind it is something that is just so soothing, so pure, and something that you'll never really forget.
But it's definitely a watch that, you know, you need to see in person to experience, and also to give it that nice clicking system whine. You can just hear
There
that.
it is. Amazing. Incredible. Look at that finishing. Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, he's only made 3 watches, ever 3 different models. So he's not like, you know, an F.P. Journe in the sense who's made, you know, tons of different movements and different models doing different things. He's made 3 different pieces. However, he's done this piece arguably as well as anybody could ever do it. People may even feel the same way about the Duality and the Sonnerie. And it's interesting how, you know, just now I'm thinking how F.P. Journe has since made a Sonnerie, and Philippe Dufour maybe paved the way for him to explore making his Sonnerie. And you have other brands now doing the double balance, whether it be like a big brand like Audemars or an independent watch brand like Greubel Forsey doing their double balance piece now. So definitely a living legend, now making his last 20 simplicities as his send-off, right?
Yep, the anniversary, the 20th anniversary of the Simplicity, and I believe those are all sold out.
And then that's it for him, right? Then we move on to a watch from a watchmaker who is unbelievably important to independent watchmaking, respected by the best watchmakers in the world today. I mean, I think F.P. Journe would say that George Daniels has done things for the watch industry that maybe no one else has done aside from Breguet. I mean, certainly up there. And now, after this piece with the coaxial escapement, you have, you know, Omega now making it regularly. Talk about why this particular George Daniels piece is so special and why George Daniels is so significant for independent watchmaking in general.
Yeah, so George, the late, great George Daniels, who passed away in 2011, you know, whereas Dufour is the living legend, I would say George Daniels is the godfather of independent watchmaking. George himself created 27 watches, 27 unique watches, 23 of which were pocket watches and 4 wristwatches. And all of them were made by hand and under one roof. So utilizing the George Daniels method of making watches. This specific example is the Millennium, which was launched in 1998. It was a limited edition. 47 were made in yellow gold, and I believe 6 were made in white gold. And it was made to celebrate the Swiss acceptance of the George Daniels coaxial escapement, which was, probably one of the most influential inventions for a wristwatch in 250 years since Thomas Mudge created the lever escapement. But the watch was made in in coordination with Roger Smith, and this is a really special piece, and it's got a pretty neat story to it because George liked selling to his close friends, his timepieces to his close friends and his his close circle. So this specific watch, the original owner was actually one of George Daniels' good friend. And one of the requests that the good friend made to him was, could he paint the hands black so that he could have better visibility on the dial? And shockingly, because I remember talking to Roger Smith about it, Roger was actually very surprised when George brought that request to him. George agreed to do it. So just another example of, with independent watchmaking, having the ability to kind of influence and be part of the design of the watch.
Very cool. The next piece that we have with us is probably the most special for you and I together, in that we went through the whole process of you getting it together. And in fact, both of us saw it in production in Switzerland at the Greubel Forsey factory at different stages in the production. Talk about this Greubel Forsey Hand Made 1, of which only 3 are made a year.
So, in terms of craftsmanship, I would say the handmade one is the highest level of craftsmanship. I mean, it is the epitome of craftsmanship. There are 2 to 3 made per year, and it's not limited edition. It's just limited based on the amount of labor hours that it requires. So the watch requires 6,000 labor hours because 95% of the watch is made in-house by hand or with hand-operated tools. In fact, George, the only components that are not made in-house are the sapphire crystal, the jewels, the mainspring, the gasket, and the spring bars. Everything else is made in-house and made by hand,
including the strap.
Geneva, including the strap, including the strap. And you're right; it's a really cool story because it's it's produced in a prototype type manufacturing process, and I had the opportunity, last year to visit the factory, to meet all of the watchmakers that not only assemble and finish the watch, but the watchmakers that fabricate the parts. So I got to see the watch being built in person, meet everybody that's involved in it, and thank them for all their hours and hard work. And then, like you said, you had the opportunity to follow up on it when it was in the finishing stages.
Right. So you were there, I believe, last summer, right? And then I saw it in October when I was over in Switzerland for Geneva Watch Days. And I would say that it's arguably the most impressive part of the Greubel factory, the handmade production room. So you go into the factory, as you know, and go down this long hallway, and there's this huge room to the right that's entirely dedicated to making 3 watches a year for Greubel Forsey. And I think there's 6 watchmakers that are fully dedicated to the production of those 3 pieces. And I'm sure there's other people who are involved somewhat as well. But it's just remarkable that such a small manufacturer, then even a small percentage of their low production, they have so many people and such a big space and so many resources dedicated to making just those 3 pieces. The amount of man hours, energy, know-how, it's, as you said, it's arguably the culmination of handmade watchmaking, certainly like at the highest level. And when we were talking about it and you were back and forth on getting it, I mean, let's be real. I mean, it's an expensive piece, and, you know, we wavered some, and you know me, I'm like, you know, if it doesn't feel right, don't get it. And I just remember that as we were talking about it more and more, it was just like, you need to get this. Like, it's, you know, for somebody who is into, you know, handmade, traditional, artisanal watchmaking, as you have elaborated on here today, this is it. This is like the peak, and you got to take it down.
Yeah, I mean, so like you said, George, you know, this watch was more about the challenge of being able to produce a watch using the traditional artisanal methods. It's about passion. In fact, all of these watches, I would say, represent passion. Mm-hmm. And you see it. You see it in their work. You see it in the craftsmanship of each watch. I mean, they each tell a remarkable story. And you know, I commend all of these independent watchmakers and you know, other independent watchmakers who are you know, who are making watches.
Yes, and what's cool about all these pieces is they're in the hands of somebody who is, you know, arguably the most passionate collector of independent watch brands. I don't think you'll find anybody more passionate. And each one of these pieces carries major sentimental value to you, on top of being absolutely exquisite and elite in what they are. And thank you for, you know, taking the time to share them with me and with all of our viewers here today. Certainly something special that you won't see anywhere else. So thank you so much, Shani.
Thank you for having me, George. It's been a pleasure. Thank you to everyone who is viewing and participating, and had a lot of fun. Thank you, George.
Looking forward to our Philly cheesesteak now.
Thank you.